Kubernetes for Humans.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of Kubernetes for Humans podcast. Today with me in the show, we have Liz Rice. Liz, can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, so I'm Liz Rice. I am Chief Open Source Officer at Isovalent, which is the company that originally created Cilium, which a lot of people know for networking and security in Kubernetes.
So, Liz, maybe give a bit of a background where, you are very strong in the security Golang community. So maybe a very brief about your background.
Yeah, so, my original background, back when I graduated, it was really in network protocols. And I spent a bit of time in the wilderness doing kind of consumer-facing things. And then probably 2015, 2016, I got into the world of containers. And somehow I kind of started getting involved in how you secure containers. I was really interested in how they work. And that kind of leads you to thinking about, well, how can you make them stop working? Which is like, how could you attack them? So I spent a fair bit of time in the security world. I wrote a book about container security. And really early on in my kind of container journey, I saw Thomas Graf talking about eBPF and Cilium. And I remember thinking, that's super interesting technology. But at the time, it was very early. It was really early. I thought, it'll be a while. And, a few years later, I just joined, obsessed with eBPF and joined the Isovalent team.
So maybe give me the TLDR of I'm using Kubernetes, right? AWS, EKS, quite happy with that. Why would I want to use Cilium or eBPF in general?
Yeah. So eBPF gives us this incredible platform for building infrastructure tools. It allows us to run custom programs in the kernel, which means we're in this incredible position to observe and influence things that are happening in the networking stack, when people are accessing files. There's all kinds of things that involve the kernel. eBPF can, be involved there. The Cilium takes advantage of that to make the networking stack kind of more efficient, so we can shortcut parts of the networking stack that we don't need. So you get incredibly good networking performance for container networking. And we also use it for network policy enforcement. And you can not only do sort of, let's say, basic kind of layer 3, layer 4, you get this very granular ability to protect traffic that's flowing between workloads. You can have layer 7 policies. You can have FQDN policies. There's
a lot of policies.
A lot of ability to, protect your workloads and limit your traffic to what you're expecting.
So for, network, I feel it's one of the less taboos. Developers don't really like usually the network layer, right? You just want it to work.
Exactly.
And you never want to think about it. So
yes.
How, who brings Cilium into the organization? A developer will surely not say, I want to replace all of the underlying network layer that they have.
That's exactly right. And developers shouldn't have to think about networking. It should be, part of the platform where they're writing their applications, but they shouldn't have to think about it. Maybe they're thinking about, my front-end service should be talking to this back-end service and that database.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But they shouldn't have to be thinking of that in terms of the networking. We believe that's true not just in the kind of Kubernetes world, but also connecting your Kubernetes workloads with existing legacy workloads. So being able to connect with your VM.
I have, everyone has some legacy workloads, right?
Exactly. To the greatest extent possible, you want to be able to do that seamlessly. But to answer your question, who's going to bring it in? A lot of organizations will have, a platform team or a network team, or quite often for us, we're engaging with a security team as well because of that, angle of ability to protect your traffic. People want that kind of powerful network policies. And then more recently, we're also doing runtime security with the Cilium Tetragon project as well.
How does that work? Because you're already sitting there, you're able to detect things, or share a bit about this.
Yeah, so the history of this is that some of the Isovalent enterprise customers were using network policies, and they're seeing this traffic, potentially malicious traffic being protected. But if you do get compromised, you want to know, how did that attack happen? Where did this come from? What's the compromised pod? What's the compromised application? when did this enter the environment? Is there anything you can do to help? And with eBPF, there is a thing we can do to help, because we can very, very efficiently, keep track of file access. Exactly. So we can have these events that are interesting for forensics, and we can filter them in the kernel. So rather than, every single file open event, let's say, going to user space and then going to a SIM and then going to somebody having to wade through all this information, we can filter it down to, let's say you're only interested in a certain set of sensitive files. We can only send the events if they are those sensitive files. So it makes it much, much more efficient and easier to look at and deal with.
So I wonder, Cilium was a very raw project. I remember a couple of years ago, and we also talked about it before the episode, and it felt like a bit, network layer is super sensitive, right? Like this is the bloodstream of the organization in a way. Do you think 5 years from now, I don't know, is everyone going to use Cilium or eBPF based networking, or what's the future has in store in terms of networking?
I think they will. We increasingly see all the major cloud providers have some networking layer that is based in some shape or form on Cilium.
Everyone?
Yeah. So Google's Data Plane V2 is based on Cilium. It is Cilium. Azure have I'm going to mangle the order of the words, but it's something like Azure CNI for Cilium, or Azure Cilium.
Yeah, it's a
CNI for Azure. I apologize, Microsoft team. I have a mental block on that.
Oh, it's a hard name.
And then AWS picked Cilium for EKS Anywhere. So that's the default CNI you get with that. So yeah, it's pretty much everywhere in some shape or form. And yeah, I think we'll see that increasingly the choice. In some places, you want to use it in combination with a native CNI. So for example,
why want the...
Yeah, so AWS is probably the best example, where their CNI is really tightly integrated with their IP address management. So, we have your VPC with some set of IP addresses. Their CNI is really, very efficient at allocating those addresses to pods.
Oh, that's fair.
But then you can use that in what's called chaining mode, where the eBPF programs are also involved in the network.
So it is also work together?
Yes, exactly. So
they're not fighting or something like that?
Exactly, they're not. So because the other CNI is using the networking stack, we can insert into the networking stack and do things like the network policy.
So I have maybe on a different angle. I'll be happy to hear your thoughts on that. In Commodore, we use AWS, EKS, not Cilium at the moment. But our biggest our biggest pain point is EC2 other costs, which is basically the network costs across different regions, across everything. Okay. Does Cilium helps with that? Or do you hear that as a problem of network costs, distributing the network in an efficient way to, not to pay AWS a lot of money, basically?
Yeah, so one thing you could do, I actually did a talk about this earlier in the week. We have this feature called cluster mesh, which is really about saying, if I have a service, I can distribute it across multiple.
Yeah, obviously for the high availability, right? I want to have this capability.
Exactly. But you can prefer, it's kind of service affinity. So you can prefer local clusters. So you can say if there is a local service or a local pod selling the service, use that. If for whatever reason there isn't, then we can
go outside
the remote. And at that point, you've got inter-cluster traffic.
But that's becoming more and more common, those kind of things.
Yeah, I remember, back in the day when people were like, yeah, multi-cloud, that's not really a thing. And now it's absolutely a thing.
Everyone is trying to do multi-cloud, but no one really figure out, I think, how to do it in a very efficient way, right? That's that.
I'm just going to say, go and watch my talk.
But you help mainly around the network, right?
Yes.
Commodore also help with multi-cloud, but I think as big organizations are moving to Kubernetes, we see more and more this, like you said, the legacy software that is not really designed to run anything that is not legacy compared to the Kubernetes cluster, and how do we bridge that gap?
Yeah. And you're right, there are lots of other angles.
There are a lot of security as well, right? Networking, profiling, observability, reliability, so many different things. So where do you think like the industry is going, like 3-4 years from now, both in terms of network or maybe other things that are happening in the space? We're just finishing in KubeCon right now. They are closing the booths on us right as we're speaking. So what do you think is like the biggest trends that are currently happening here, like the system?
You can hear them.
Yeah, you can hear them. Yeah, we are not laughing. Let's say that.
Yeah, so you can't have missed at this conference, AI.
Is everyone going to be AI?
Well, I kind of think that maybe it's a little bit over at the moment. It's clearly very important. It's clearly interesting that people are able to run their AI workloads on top of Kubernetes. That's definitely something that people want to do. But in terms of trends, I feel like we're going to see a trough of disappointment, and then there will be
like any big trend, right?
Yeah. But the hype is pretty high at the moment.
And other than AI, anything else interesting you saw in like this KubeCon compared to Chicago or like the one before that? Like, where are we going?
Well, I think the energy is back.
Yeah,
this is the biggest KubeCon to date.
Yeah,
ever.
How many people? I don't know.
12,500. Yeah, so it's massive, and the energy. There are people here looking to deploy solutions. For real. They have production workloads. There's much less, science projects, and it's much more.
Yeah, like home lab.
Yeah, exactly. So in a lot of ways, the industry is growing up. The experts are becoming the end users. I kind of realized we have this end user technical advisory board now for the CNCF, and those are the people who've got the real expertise in what it's like to operate Kubernetes, and what's the day two problems, and how do all these different components fit together. Whereas the maintainers who 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was the kind of specialist. We're now niche specialists.
Only for like a network inside, like Cilion inside.
Yeah, and it's the users who really have that experience of what it's like to put all these things together.
So what will happen for Kubernetes like 5 years from now? Other than the networking, everyone will use Cilion, right? Like that's forgiven. AI will be something, but is there any other interesting trend that you are observing?
I mean, we talk about Kubernetes everywhere and being, the sort of pervasive environment that people run workloads. I have heard a few people, talking about using Kubernetes where in the past they'd used serverless. I've never really subscribed to the, serverless version. I don't think, there is no single hammer that is right for every single nail. But it's interesting to see more and more people saying, yeah, actually Kubernetes is the right choice. And I think particularly when you can combine it with those legacy workloads and the ability to run Kubernetes on edge devices.
Are you seeing a lot? Like I will say from Commodore, we are seeing more and more use cases that we didn't really thought about like a couple of years ago. Like one of the biggest food chains in America are now deploying like Kubernetes per each one of their branches, and like using Commodore like 5,000, 6,000 branches. Do you think like it's going to be a thing like Kubernetes on edge?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know whether it's the same retailer, but I've definitely seen some interesting, case studies where people are talking about, having Kubernetes in there,
Then Cilion works well there as well, or like obviously yes.
Yeah. I mean, networking, you've got to be able to connect those edge terminals, and that's
so maybe like we're talking a lot about how Kubernetes is great, and I agree, right? Like everyone here that are in KubeCon kind of like Kubernetes. What do you think are like the biggest drawbacks at the moment from like the platform perspective? What is not working as expected?
Good question. I mean, I guess another pretty hot topic at the moment is this idea of platform engineering and how you provide a consistent experience for developer teams. And, I think there's been a lot of progress, things like Backstage, things like Cratix, they're tackling that problem. But it's clearly something that people are, it's a problem still to be solved.
Yeah, no.
Like we're not complete there.
No, well, we're also trying really to have to bridge that gap. But I do agree. I think that as platform engineers is really on the rise.
Yeah.
In the end of the day, like developers are writing the program that really move the business, right? Like the application developers are the end users for platform teams. And I do think like Kubernetes is a lot of magic layers for them a lot of the times, and it is a problem. Networking is like never an issue until it is an issue, right? Like load balancing, spikes, machines that don't have enough bandwidth and things like that.
And
so I think
DNS, because it's always DNS.
You know, like we had the DNS issue not that long ago, but it happens for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, Liz, I think I think with that words of like it's always DNS. I think we can wrap it. Any last words do you want to share?
I guess, I hope everyone who was here had a wonderful KubeCon, and looking forward to the next one in Salt Lake City.
I'm looking as well.
Having me here. Let's hope we wrap this up.
Yeah. Like I think someone already wanted to pick us up. Thanks very much, Liz.
Pleasure.
Wow.
Kubernetes for humans.